Anyone with a desire to become well-known in America should not try to do it by writing poetry, which makes Richard Blanco something of an exception.
Richard Blanco, who lives in Bethel, is not exactly famous, but he is pretty well known, at least in Maine. He has a new book of poems out called Homeland of My Body, and he sat down with us to talk about that and the other things going on in his life in what has been an interesting year.
Let me start with a question I don't think I've ever asked you, and I know it varies from poem to poem, but in general, how long does it take you to write a poem?
Every poem is it's like a child. They're all different. Some poems come really fairly fast. Some take months. Some take years. But I would say when I'm in big, like sort of writing mode, I usually can finish up, or I give myself a deadline of about a week.
And on the other end, it will sometimes literally take you years before you're happy with the final version of a poem?
Yeah, you know, as they say in poetry world, a poem is never done, it's just abandoned. And you do get to a certain point where, you know, again, like children, this one's not going to go to medical school, that's okay. But then sometimes readers surprise you too, because some of the poems that you think are not the C poems, they're like, I really love that poem, or it gets picked up for an anthology or on an SAT test or something like that. So sometimes, of course, you're the worst judge of your own work.
You never know what readers are going to think of your work, and yeah, they may dislike a poem that you love.
Right.
Or the reverse, they may love a poem that you don't think too much of. Well, how do you feel when they do too, that they love a poem that you thought was kind of, yeah?
Well, then I warm up to the poem a little bit more. They also share their perspectives, and I'm thinking, well, I guess that was there. You know, I learn from readers about what my own poems mean.
This book is not the complete collected works of Richard Blanco, but it's a big collection. What was the idea with this?
Well, I'm at a point in my career where I think it was time to publish a kind of what they call a mid-career book. It's kind of like the equivalent of a retrospective, perhaps, in the art world.
As the years go by, the accolades keep accumulating. In March of 2023, in a ceremony at the White House, President Biden presented Richard Blanco with one of the nation's highest honors, the National Humanities Medal. It was a heady experience.
I mean, they have like a 30-piece band from the Navy or Army, I'm not sure, and there's all this hoopla, and so I'm walking in and you know, we file in, and there's the band is playing, and I start crying. It's so funny. I mean, not sobbing, but I get teary-eyed, and lo and behold, I'm sitting next to Kamala Harris, and she reaches out to me and says, honey, just take it all in. I was like, okay, now I'm really going to cry.
This was not Blanco's first taste of presidential honors. In 2013, when Barack Obama was sworn into his second term as president, Blanco read a poem he had written especially for the inauguration.
One sun rose on us today, kindled over our shores.
Receiving the National Humanities Medal, he says, was even more emotional for him and more fun.
It was so humbling to be in the room with someone like Vera Wang, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Colson Whitehead, and you could tell, much like the inauguration, in a sense of reverence and humility. Even these super mega stars, you know, Bruce Springsteen, like what? Super, you know, no guards, no. They were really honored themselves too. You'd think they wouldn't care. So that was very special to see that people like that are good people.
Richard Blanco also told us the story, which we ran earlier here on 207, about how Julia Louis-Dreyfus of Seinfeld and Veep fame came up to him, big fan of his work. Her mother writes poetry, her father wrote poetry, and Richard, of course, just a little bit in disbelief over the fact that Julia Louis-Dreyfus was fangirling over him.
Oh, I love it. On one of his works that he obviously did not abandon, as he mentioned.
Well, we know what that's like. Sometimes the deadlines creep up and you don't finish your project, you just abandon it.
Exactly.
Again, the name of Richard Blanco's new book is Homeland of My Body. He'll be talking about it next week at an event with Governor Janet Mills, who who also writes poetry.
Blanco and the governor will appear together talking about poetry and books and whatever else comes up. The event, which is sponsored by Print, a bookstore in Portland, is happening in Portland on Friday, October 27th.
You'll find more information about tickets and everything else in the 207 section of our News Center Maine website or